the feast of all the saints is in some way our own. By anticipation and by collocation, for if we are inhabited by the Blessed Trinity, we are in some way already in that cloud. Our family is on the other side as well as on this side. There is a mystic bonding out there and in there. If we adore the Lord in spirit and in truth, in the Blessed Sacrament, truly aware that we are gazing at love, fontal love, the love that made us, that invented us, that invented the world for us, then we are also gazing into that same centre as our brethren beyond the veil as well as throughout the world. There is a communion of saints. Indeed, the New Testament expression for the people of God is agioi, the saints, and they are the ones sanctified. They are holy because inhabited and cleansed. Hence it is that we need on this feast day to look a little further. It is not just a day, it is an anticipation of days. Also a wider day, for we have all the past with us as well. Those who have conquered heaven have conquered it with the same instruments as we have. They too had a certain amount of time in their hands. They had the use of the senses with which they were able to take in truth by reading and by listening. They had the use of the senses also with which to communicate with God and touch Him in the sacramental sphere. They had the use of the senses to transport them from A to B, where they could love the people of God, and in them God served well. Hence it is that they reign now, having passed through this same moment, which is but a moment in terms of eternity. It is important not to take time for granted. It is important not to take these encounters with divinity for granted. One time I heard the prior preaching on this in the Carthusian house where I was for years, saying that it is a great sadness to see that with such an abundance of sacramental life, so many communions received, we have perhaps not advanced. In other words, grace has not had the required effect, not because it was not able to, but because we did not allow it to. It is hardening of the heart. We are not engaging with what we are encountering. We become machines, even in our prayer. The saints did the same things externally, but engaged fully, and the graces touching them did not touch them in vain, but they were the same graces essentially, for love is always generous. We switch off. The vision given to St. John is given unto us through his eyes. The mystics are our eyes into the beyond. Indeed, the whole experience of the beyond that he had on the quiet Isle of Patmos is something that also should remind us. We have direct access to the beyond when we are in the liturgical sphere. The angels are there, amongst us and around us, fluttering their wings about our head and shoulder when we approach the sacred mysteries which the saints celebrated well, with which they engaged. But the saints also, our brethren, are there, somehow adoring, and they're not far away, for we are adoring the same slain Lamb. Therefore, when we name the saints at the altar, we are reminding ourselves of the wider family with which we are in true communication and communion in Christ. It is the same Lord. But also, we cannot come close to that same centre of the universe, the Creator and the Redeemer and the Sanctifier, without mystically encountering our brethren too, who truly love the Lord and worship Him at this moment in time, in spirit and in truth. The Lord loves His own. He meets them where they're at, in the context in which they were born quite often and for which they are not responsible. We need therefore to be aware that grace is extremely generous and sanctifies in unexpected corners. We need to have that same respect for the mystery of souls different from ourselves. The life of the blessed, oimakarioi, the blessed ones, is something which then is found again in many a context. Certain traits come through. Gentleness. The bully is not an icon of Christ. The loud person is not an icon of Christ. The selfish person is not an icon of Christ. Neither is the proud person and the person who immediately answers back, while Christ was silent before Pilate and had a dignity in his silence. Being persecuted for being close to Jesus is a joy for the soul who truly loves Jesus. And the litmus test is, who counts, Jesus or my fellow human beings? Because if it matters that much that I be justified immediately before my fellow human beings, it is an indication of where I look for glory, consolation, honour, and even power. The humble are those who look at Jesus and who have a deeper understanding of who matters in opinion. Glory is not given by other human beings who also have to respond before that same majesty. To conclude, we are, if we correspond to the proposition of grace, on the winning side. Every time we bury a friend who was close to God, we are celebrating the ultimate victory. It is a terrible loss for the satanic forces when a soul is lost and goes the wrong way for them, as C.S. Lewis well portrays in the Screwtape Letters. In a contemplative monastery, the saying farewell to a faithful monk at the end of an innings here on earth is a great celebration, very different from the self-made beatifications that we have in our own funerals here on earth, quite often in the world. God alone has the right to judge. That otherness of looking unto glory beyond is of a different order and should be the correct vision of the Christian soul. We leave it to God to praise the soul. We thank God for the soul and for its voyage through time into the great family of the beyond. Remember the prior one time saying, when we had buried a lay brother actually, how he had gone to the great family. He was referring to the long history of the community going back to the Middle Ages, and the majority were on the other side. The majority are on the other side. And when we open our eyes, we look not only at the glorified Lamb, slain but now standing, but we do so in communion with those who have got there as well. And going home is a great, great cosmic reunion of the blessed.